Well, welcome to another episode of the Residential Developer Podcast. I'm your host. My name's Nathan Battishall. And as I promised off the back of our month of mindset recently that we had, I promised that I would do a little bit of a Q&A. Now, we had a whole bunch of questions come in. It actually took a client of mine just to remind me that, hey, you didn't do the Q&A for the month of mindset. So we've compiled a bunch of questions, and look, we sort of got the top few questions just to compact it into a little nice little bite-sized episode to really answer some of these key questions that I think are relevant and vital and important for people doing projects and developments. Because for me, and I want to continually every 3-4 months come back and talk a little bit around mindset, because I think it's a very unspoken about area. It's a very unutilized area. It's a massive area that I think can make or break a successful developer and someone who wants to go for this on the long haul and be in a good, strong mental, emotional space in terms of when it comes to doing projects. So I'm just going to work my way through a few of the questions that came through. And again, just keep in mind, these are obviously my thoughts and my views. Doesn't mean they're correct. And you'll be able to form your own, revelations from some of the questions and how you look at things and how you deal with some of the elements and areas that have come through as questions. So the first one was a great question. How do I stay resilient with approval and construction delays or setbacks that happen? Now, I think that's a key one, because I think the reality is, and I shared this, that setbacks will happen. Constraints, problems will happen. There'll be setbacks in an approval element. There'll be setbacks from a consultant point of view, where something you thought you could have done, you now can't. And the reality is setbacks will come, okay? Setbacks will come. Often there'll be delays from a construction point of view, delays whether it be in council or waiting on a Section 68, or there could be delays with a particular consultant, or delays just purely due to a time of year, okay? And it's important to stay resilient, but the question is how? How do you stay resilient? How do you bounce back? How do you keep positive? How do you look after your own mental state when these things happen? Now, first and foremost, you might be already in the middle of a project, so we might look at it from that. But if you haven't started a project, well, how you stay resilient is by having contingencies, okay? Having expectations that aren't over the top, okay, or expectations that are unrealistic. And I think that's the key thing. Too many people have unrealistic expectations, and they base all of their numbers on everything going to plan, everything working 100% like clockwork, or even worse. I see some people, they overinflate timeframes. A council approval might take 9 months and they've allowed 3 months. Construction might take 12 months and they've allowed 6 months. All of a sudden, they've completely overcooked everything, whether it be their numbers, their timeframes, all of those type of things. But look, if you're in the middle of a project and you are facing delays, it's important to make sure that you're not getting yourself so worked up in stress, because the reality is, issues come, concerns come, constraints come. And the worst thing you can do is to work yourself up into such a stressful state that you begin to make unwise decisions, that you begin to become impossible to work with. And I've seen that, where people get themselves so worked up to a state they burn all the people around them. So they're then having to find new consultants, or they're having to change directions or change pathways, or worst case, I've even seen it where people have had a builder just walk off site, or they've had to the point where their relationship with the builder or the team is just untenable, which then makes communication difficult and makes things really tricky. So the important thing is to take a step back and just reassess, re-examine. If you need to, bring in experienced people to help. If you need to, ask for some support. And the key thing is just to communicate. Don't get to the point where you stop communicating. Don't get to the point where you micromanage. Don't get to the point where you burn people around you. You've got to remember your team are your team, and you need to make sure all of your team are pulling in the same direction. And I find the best leaders, when challenges come, they rise to the occasion, they regather, they get people around them, and they look at, okay, how can we make up for that lost time? You get the right people, when a challenge comes, you take it head on and you look at, okay, is there some areas where we can pick up a little bit of lost time? Is there some areas where we can remorph? All of a sudden that constraints hit us and that we've got to go a slightly different direction. Can we change tack? Can we do something that's going to, improve the profit margin of that project? Is there something we can do, to minimise some construction costs to counteract that issue and constraint that arose? And that all comes through teamwork. It comes through clear thinking. It comes through, taking that ability to step back, reassess, re-examine, gather the team. Because the problem is if you're at each other's throats and you're just putting pressure, no one will be thinking clearly. Yourself, your team, whether that be consultants, planners, builders, contractors, if you're just driving it, with a whip, the reality is everyone's going to be reacting and, there's going to be that lack of creativity, lack of thought. So it's just important. Take a step back, look at what's happened. If it's a time delay, look at, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? How can we get some of that time back? If we can't get that time back, okay, run your numbers, look at that. Do you need to pull a few things back to counteract the extra interest, the additional costs? Just be creative. Look at things. Have good people around you, have good team around you, and build that camaraderie and work out ways to be able to bounce back. Another good question is, how do I manage the stress of career, family, and doing my own development work? And look, I think that's a big one, because I think a lot of people listening, you're probably in a similar boat where you've got multiple hats or you've got multiple commitments. And I think everyone deals with complexity differently. Some people are amazing at compartmentalising, other people not so much. And the reality is all of these things, whether it be owning a business or having a career, having a family, and then doing projects, can be a juggle, especially when the heat's on in all those areas. And I think it's not easy to manage those things. And look, I wear those hats myself. Often I'm having to manage a business and a team within that business. I've got my own projects and developments that I'm managing. I've got my wife, my family, my kids. So there's so many different moving pieces, and the thing is, when you put time into one, you're neglecting something else. So it's always important to be able to really assess and ensure that you're working in that space. And obviously it can bring about stress, but I think first and foremost, managing stress is about becoming a better self-leader. That's what I've had to do myself, is become better at managing myself, okay? Better at becoming more efficient with who I am, what I do, and how I do it. So you've just got to look at areas where you can input into that, and you've got to assess what's the most important thing to you. For me, I don't discount from the fact that my number one priority in my life is my family, okay? My family comes first. Now, that's just a priority that I've decided in my life. I want to protect my marriage, okay? And I want to protect my relationship with my kids. Now, for me, I've always been a big believer that my relationship with my wife comes first, because if I'm strong, if me and my wife Mel are strong, I know for a fact we will be strong for our kids. Now, that's not putting our kids second. That's just deciding that, you know what, a strong unit, a strong team will make a strong family. So that's just something we've always prioritised. It doesn't mean we neglect our kids, but we make sure we're strong, because if we're strong for our kids. And if we're together, we're united, that's just something we've decided. Now, you might see things different. I'm not here to say one way or another. But look, I'm also here to say that I see a lot of relationships and families get busted up as a result of projects and developments and overwork and basically not making the main thing. And a lot of people want to make their family priority, but they don't know how. And I think that's key. And I think it's understanding where the stress is coming from and helping alleviate the stress. For me, there's non-negotiables that I do even in my daily habits, my morning routines, my daily rhythm, my daily routine. Like for me personally, I like to move my body as soon as I get out of bed. So, for me, I'm someone who I actually find that I'm at my strongest physically to be able to do exercise in the afternoon. But as someone who owns a business, who is very busy in my day-to-day, I know for a fact when I go to the gym in the afternoon, life can come up and things can change and things can pivot, and all of a sudden I might set myself that I want to go to the gym 5 days a week. For me, I go 5 days a week. That's just my rhythm, my routine. I do 3 days of strength training and I do 2 days of running. Okay. So for me, that's just my rhythm, because for me, I need that energy. But I do it in the morning. The reason I do it in the morning is even if my day goes to crap, like in regards to work, if things don't go to plan, I've done my fitness, I've looked after my physical self, but it also helps me look after my mental self and be strong and sharp in that space. But it also means if my day goes to crap at work, I'm not going to the gym then in the afternoon and chewing into time with my family. So, for me, it's opportunity to be able to go home, be at the dinner table and eat with my wife and kids and enjoy those moments, because for me, you don't get that time back. So, for me, that's key. But I think it's also just understanding to just be kind to yourself as well, because there's times in your life, and I've had to say this to my wife before, there's times where I just say to my wife and my kids that, look, I've just got to, for this next 2 weeks, I need to hustle. I need to grind. I need to put some time into this new initiative or this something within the business. I need to put some time into grind in that space. But when I do that, I'm going to reward ourselves with something. It could be a trip away, a weekend away. It could be working towards a holiday. Sometimes leading up to going on a holiday, I might have to grind a little bit. And it's just, communication and talking and understanding that it's not about always putting equal time into every element. Sometimes it's choosing where to cheat. It's choosing where, you can be effective. Like if it's in your career or in your business, maybe there's a whole bunch of stuff you're doing that you shouldn't be doing. You don't need to be doing. So you might have to empower other people to do it. Again, development, I find a lot of people that get heavily stressed is because they try and control everything. They're trying to control their schedule all the time. They're trying to control their developments. They haven't built a team. They're micromanaging. And I think from a development point of view, once you build a world-class team, all you are is the captain of the ship who's leading, who's directing, who's able to really, steer things in the right direction. When you have a world-class team around you, you don't need to micromanage them. You get to sit back, enjoy the ride. Like some of my favorite clients and developer clients are guys who just literally, they might only ever walk on site twice in the project. Does that mean they're neglecting it? No, it's because they've built a world-class team. They trust the process. They've done it over and over again. They understand their lane and they're pushing into a space that brings in fulfillment and enjoyment. But then there's others who love to go on site once in a while because it brings them alive. They love to see the progress and walk in. For me, as much as I'm in and around this space every day, but my last development, I probably went on site maybe twice throughout that 9-month period. And people think, well, what are you doing? For me, you trust the process. You get good people, you get good contractors who know what they're doing. For me, I've got a lot going on in my life. So it's not that I'm neglecting it. It's just that I chose to put good people in place and let them do what they do best and not micromanage that element. So I think that's key, and just looking at areas where you can choose to cheat. For you, it might mean that it might be more cost-effective of your time. Like for me, it's things like you might absolutely hate mowing the lawn. And if you're earning good money doing what you do, whether it be a business or work like in your career, and that 2 hours might be better spent chilling with your family on a weekend or doing a little bit of work on your development so you're not stressed out, and you pay someone to go and mow the lawns if you hate it. I know some people that they just get a bit of help getting some dinners once in a while, or getting a pool cleaner in, just areas, or cleaning the house, things that they know that just chew into time, where they can be investing into family or working on some development-based things if they're having to do a little bit of a weekend. It's choosing areas to cheat where you can be effective and, put those things in place. Next question is, how do I convince my wife to do a project again after our last project lost money? I think this is a big one, and I think it's a tricky question to answer because every couple is different. And I hear this all the time. I remember being at the F1 and talking to a guy, really successful guy, really switched on, had a development that went south, and really made him gun shy to go again with a project. And I get it. There's been times I've tried ventures, I've tried things, and it hasn't worked. And you feel like you've let people down. There's been times I've tried things and I feel like I've let my wife Mel down by losing money on a particular venture or an idea or an opportunity, and I get it. It's a really tricky space, especially if you're so passionate about something like property. And I really feel for the person who's written this in, and I've been there. We did a project, we just virtually broke even, because of climates and that sort of thing. And I think it's just, you've just got to navigate that I guess that element of it. Every couple's different, and look, some people can get really traumatized by a project not working, and without knowing the context. I've seen it where some people have lost the family home or they've lost their life savings, and it can be really tricky, that space. But look, I think first and foremost, you have to decide what's most important. And, it's like any relationship. For me, marriage especially, for me, this is how I view it. Everyone's different. But for me, it's about a partnership. It's not about what I want. That's just for me personally. And again, I'm just sharing my own thoughts around these things, and I hope it helps someone. But for me, it's about a partnership. I'm a team. It's not about me getting everything that I want. I know when I got married, that was part of what I signed up for, was to be giving, to be someone who, brings equal opportunity and equal value. And so if a project hasn't worked, you need to go on that journey. If one of you wants to go again and the other party's not so sure, you just got to take the time to navigate that, I believe, and to work through that, and to look at what that looks like. That it may not necessarily be that your partner doesn't want to do it again. It just may be that there's some wounds that need to be healed from that loss or that sense of concern. And look, everyone's got different risk profiles. That's the tricky thing about a partnership and a relationship and a marriage, is we bring different personalities to the table. We bring different risk profiles to the table. My wife and I see things quite different. But I think that's a strength sometimes too, because if someone's very risk adverse and someone's a bit more, timid, so you've just got to look at how can you work that for the best. So, it's a tricky one to answer because I think everyone's circumstance is different. Everyone's had a different level of loss, and everyone's got a different level of relationship. But I think the key thing is to listen, be a good communicator, to listen, to understand why they don't want to go again, understand what their concerns are, understand what their fears are. And, if you made some unwise decisions, you need to own that. And maybe you need to go and do some education. Maybe you need to look at some ways to actually rebuild some trust. If you lost family money, sometimes it's about saying, okay, well, what if we did something small? Sometimes it's about looking at, okay, what's a bite-sized piece? What's a step? What's the next step? Sometimes it's not about just going straight back to something that maybe could, bring up a lot of pain. So I think it's key it's not so much about convincing your wife to do a project again. It's about, really navigating that process and really working through that process, and just understand that you're a team. And I think that's where I've seen the tension, get to breaking point in relationships. Unfortunately, money can be one of the big key elements that dissolve relationships and marriages, because it can be a big contention, and it's an important thing to navigate. And with good communication and teamwork, and letting each person in that relationship be able to really bring the best of themselves to the table. So, and feel like they've got a voice and they've got a say. So I don't think it's about convincing them, but I think it's about just showing them, educating them, helping them, taking them on the journey, showing them how passionate you are about that. If you have taken a hit before, it's really helping them to understand some of the lessons you've learned through that, and navigating that, and maybe get a few small wins on the board. So it might just be about helping them see a few small wins. It could be helping someone else do a project. Maybe you love projects so much. Like I know someone who lost a whole bunch of money and don't have ability to borrow money anymore, but what they decided is, I love projects. I know I'm good at it. I made some dumb mistakes, but now what they do, they development manage. They manage developments for high worth individuals who don't have the time. And that was their little comeback and their little way to push back into that space, because they know they're good at it. And they're able to earn some, good income now through doing that side of thing, but with the long-term view that they want to get back into a position where they can push in to that space. So another great question is, how do I lead my team of consultants and building team with confidence, even when I feel like a junior? I think this is a great question, because I see a lot of these sometimes where people feel like they're not qualified enough to lead their project, or they feel like they're inferior to all of the team that they've got around them. And the reality is, you want world-class people on your team, whether it be a builder, designer, planner, consultants. You want the best of the best. You want great people on your team. And by having great people on your team will likely mean that everyone on your team is better than you at their particular sphere of influence, their sphere of expertise. And what makes a great leader is someone who's not the best at everything. I think what makes a great leader is someone who has a vision of where they want to take that project, and they lead in that direction. They inspire the team around them to push towards that one common goal. For me, I always say, I'm not the leader of this organisation that I lead. I'm not the best person in the organisation. I just happen to get here first. I happen to be the one that carries the vision of that business. I want better people around me in what I do. I don't need to be the best at everything. I don't need to be the sharpest, the best at what I do. I just want to have great people around me. So if you do feel inferior, like a junior, like you don't know enough, just be confident in the fact that this is your project. You're leading this project. You don't have to have all the knowledge. Put people around you who are great and good at what they do, build that camaraderie, build that trust, and go from there. Another great question is, what mindset is needed to scale from one project to multiple? And I think this sort of comes off the back of that last question. I think in order to scale to multiple projects, I think you need to build, first and foremost, you've got to build a world-class team. You've got to have a great team of people around you from a planning point of view, but then from a building point of view, and then obviously selling, marketing, all that side of it. So you got to build camaraderie, build team. And I always say this, build long-term, build with people for the future, for long-term. Don't be someone who just chops and changes your team. You learn through time. You learn through mistakes. You learn through projects. You learn from project to project to project. And when you do it as a team, when you do it with your team, you're able to navigate. You're able to really hone in on what worked, what didn't work, what we can do better. You can do your SWOT. You can really look at those opportunities, strengths, weaknesses, and you can really, push ahead and push forward. And so I think if you want to go from one project to multiple, there's obviously a whole lot of pieces you need to put in place from a financial point of view. And in terms of your capacity and your ability to borrow, do you need to bring in partners? Do you need to get investors involved? Or, do you need to sell down some property? Do you need to move some things around. You need to set up some more cash flow, positive businesses to help prop that up. There's a whole lot of pieces in that space. But from an execution, a project space, it's important not to micromanage. Have a team around you so that you can scale up where it doesn't impact your time. It doesn't impact your ability to make switched on smart, good decisions. And I think just having a plan. If you don't have a plan, you won't get there. So write down your plan. If your plan is to do 5 a year, 2 a year, 5 every 5 years or 1 a year, like however that looks, if you want to scale and do or be doing multiple projects at a time, you've got to have a plan. Have a plan, have a team, and be able to execute on that. And just the last question, just for time's sake, is how do I stop letting perfection delay my progress? And look, this is a massive one I see where people are often aiming for perfection. I think that's one of the biggest killers that hinders people from being a really switched on, good, strong investor or developer doing projects from one who's not, is that whole perfectionism trap. I spoke about this recently on the podcast, the difference between excellence and perfectionism. And I think you never want to aim for perfectionism because you'll never ever arrive at perfect, because there will always be something better. There will always be someone better. There will always be a better project. There will always be a better option. There will always be a better deal. There will always be better. And the person who continually aims for perfect often will procrastinate. They'll often hold off. They won't pull the trigger, and they'll be known as a gunner. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. They'll be known as someone who continually micromanages, continually goes backward and forward and cannot get traction on a project because they have this problem of perfectionism. And for me, I'd rather be someone who has an attitude of excellence than someone who has an attitude of perfectionism. Because I've found that when you have an attitude of perfectionism, nothing's ever good enough. And that culture will rub off on you, onto your team, and you'll never be an encourager. You'll always be someone who's always constantly unhappy with it, always constantly not satisfied with it. And I'm not saying, and that's when I say excellence, that's why for me, it's having an attitude of excellence, because for me, excellence doesn't mean sloppy. Excellence doesn't mean having a slack attitude or near enough's good enough. Excellence is saying that in everything we do, we're going to do it in an excellent manner. Now, sometimes that means, could it be better if you waited 6 months? Yes, it could. But the reality is, if you wait 6 months, you can kill a project. If you wait 12 months, you can kill a project. If you wait for the most excellent site to come up, you may never get that site. Sometimes it's about saying, you know what? It's an attitude. It's a spirit of excellence. It's a culture. It's something that you carry that with what you do it in an excellent manner. So if you build a culture of excellence in your projects, what you're going to do is build a culture of excellence in your team, whether that be from a acquisition point of view, from a planning point of view, from an approval point of view, from a construction point of view, from a reselling point of view, that you attract people of who you are. So if you're someone who is always after perfectionism, you'll likely either repel people or you'll attract those sort of people who have that same sort of attitude. And there's, a lot of it can come from the right place, but the problem is, I've seen it where you attract that sort of person where you never pull the trigger, or you're continually going backward and forward, and everything's delayed, everything's pushed back, everything's difficult, everything's hard work, everything. You build resentment in people because there's that culture of perfectionism, and it often comes from not so much a bad place, but it comes from a place of nothing's ever good enough, and it can just be quite negative if you're not careful. So I'm bigger on building excellence than building perfectionism, because nothing will ever be perfect, but things can be excellent. You can do a project that has excellence. If you look hard enough, you'll find imperfections. But if you have a culture of excellence, you'll build that into your project after project after project after project, and you'll attract people around you that carry the same culture of excellence in your dream team. you'll find that you'll go from project to project, and those projects will continue to go from excellence to excellence to excellence to excellence. You look at some of the most well-known, prestigious developers around that do projects, they get to the point where people buy their product or buy their projects because of the excellence they've built over a long period of time, and they've attracted this culture, they've attracted this excellence, this spirit of excellence in everything they do, that it's not perfect, because nothing's ever perfect, but they carry that spirit of excellence, and it's been carried out over longevity, and all of a sudden that people will pay a premium for their product because they carry that culture of excellence, and they've attracted the trades, the builders, the designers, all the people around them that carry that same culture. And it didn't come from a place of perfection, but it came from a place of excellence, that we want to do things in an excellent manner. We don't want to cut corners, but we want to do things in an excellent manner and continually have a culture of improvement. So look, I hope this has been an enjoyable episode. Again, if you've got any more questions around some of our episodes, fire them through. Once in a while we do a episode where we answer a whole lot of questions that people have. So look, once again, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week.